so faithful every week. And to the online people, I know I have one friend in Ohio watching. Hi, Tammy. Nice to have you join us, and anyone else who's watching online. And so today, we're going to do things a little different just because of the story and something that Alice said last week. She said she's used to teaching to children.
Yes.
And it got me thinking, the best way that I learn is actually through stories, like a child, you know? We're going to go over the scripture. I'm going to go over a fictional, historical fiction story that could fill in the blanks about Rahab and Jericho and Solomon. So we need a microphone.
Yeah, there looks like there's one up on top. It looks like stuff's turned on.
Got
It is turned on. Yes, it's ready for you.
Are we on YouTube right now?
Testing. Testing.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay.
It does make a difference.
It does.
Okay. Okay. Where was I? Okay.
Sorry.
So we're gonna go over the scripture. Alice is gonna read it. We're gonna break it up a little bit. We're gonna talk about it in story form, and then we are gonna go over our book. So I'm assuming everybody did their lesson. There's so much meat in there. There's so many good nuggets. So we are gonna go over that, but we're just gonna fill in a couple of blanks of what could have been happening at that time. And so what we'll do is we'll start with prayer. Dear Lord, thank you. We thank you each and every day that we are privileged to get together, get in your word, learn more about you so we can share with the others. We just ask that you lead this study, that you give women inspiration and speaking points that they want to share that you've done in their life. Because we're here, it's all about you. It's not about us. In your sweet and precious name, amen. Okay. So Alice, do you want to read Joshua 2?
Okay. Would you like me to read how far, the whole thing? All of 2?
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the women had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan, and as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up to the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given this land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard of how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og and the 2 kings of Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heavens above and on earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, that you will save us from death. Our lives for your lives, the men assured her. If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully after the Lord gives us the land. So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. Now she had said to them, "Go to the hills so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there 3 days until they return, and then go on your way." The men said to her, "This oath you made us swear will not be binding on us unless when we enter the land you have tied the scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, unless you have brought your father and mother, your brother and all your family into your house. If anyone goes outside your house into the street, his blood will be on your own heart, and we will not be responsible. As for anyone who is in the house with you, his blood will be on our head, and if a hand is laid on him, but if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from the oath you made us swear." "Agreed," she replied. "Let it be as you say." So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. When they left, they went into the hills and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. Then the 2 men started back. They went down out of the hills, forded the river, came to Joshua son of Nun, and told him everything that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, "The Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands. All the people are melting in fear because of us."
Paints a pretty terrifying story for Jericho. Unlike 40 years prior, when they were going to go in and they were supposed to take the promised land with Moses, right? Mm-hmm. Moses sent in Caleb and Joshua to spy out the land, plus several other spies. Well, Joshua and Caleb believed that God would do what he said he was going to do, but there was so much doubt and rebellion that they didn't go, right? Mm-hmm. So it resulted in them wandering the desert for 40 years, and they had that slave mentality too, I think. Mm-hmm. You know, they've gone through a lot, right? Yeah. Seeing all the miracles in Egypt, escaping, going through the Red Sea that was parted, and then wandering in the desert, complaining about the manna. You know, they just didn't have that mentality to go in and take the promised land. Mm-hmm. And so God waited till a generation passed away. Now also, in Canaan, Jericho specifically, they also saw the Israelites being defeated 40 years prior. So in between time, the king of Jericho made the walls higher. He improved his battlement. He armed his soldiers. He felt like they were pretty safe. Now Jericho is the gateway to Canaan. They have to get through Jericho to get into the promised land. But the king is so arrogant, he thinks they're just little Israelites, right? Well, now they're encamped on the other side of the Jordan River. And all the people know it. But not only do they know that, they know of all the victories that they've just had. Mm-hmm. The kings they've defeated. And they've gone in and they've wiped out the whole city. You know, they didn't just take them captive and take their spoils. They killed them all. Mm-hmm. You know, the animals, the kids, the babies. And so Jericho is also a different generation. And they hear the stories. And they know that the Israelites are encamped there, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the environment over in the Israeli camp. Now, in Jericho, we have Rahab, the prostitute. Now, I don't know of any young lady that is born in and thinks, I'm going to grow up and be a prostitute. It is not really a goal, right? We don't know how she became a prostitute. It could have been she was very beautiful, And in those days, the king could take anyone he wanted.
Right.
It's possible that he took her as a concubine. He didn't marry her, but we can tell, she's very witty, she's cunning, she pays attention. So maybe she got the king, she knew that eventually he was gonna find somebody younger, prettier, right? She had a short window of time, and she didn't want to end up on the street selling her body. Because now her reputation is already ruined. Everyone knows that she's a harlot. So why not make a business out of it? It's possible she got the king to give her the home on the east gate, where she can see everyone that's coming and going, and the soldiers that are coming and going, the merchants that are coming and going throughout the land. And what do they see first? Rahab, her inn, the prostitute. They can go in and she can find out all kinds of information once she fills them with wine, right? So she's a wealth of information for the king if she's placed strategically on the east gate. She can also see over the Jordan River. She can see the Israeli camp. Not everyone's fearful, I don't think. But Rahab's paid attention. She has had people come in. She has possibly learned all of the stories of the Israelites and their conquers and everything they've done to all the villages. And the king already suspects that Israel is again going to send 2 spies, or however many spies, to find out what they're up against. So it's possible Rahab's watching for them, right? Back to the Israeli camp. So Joshua is going to send 2 spies. He doesn't name them specifically, but we do know that Solomon ends up marrying Rahab. They have 40,000 troops. So for him to have met her and get to know her personally, maybe he was one of the spies. And Ephraim was one of the spies. So now they have to cross the Jordan River. It's springtime. The river is swollen. I just happen to have somebody here that knows about rushing rivers. Would you like to share a story of just how terrifying that could be?
Yeah.
And let's keep in mind, ladies, they've been in the desert for 40 years. Do you think they knew how to swim?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Well, I have had the pleasure of going down the Colorado River several times, and on one of our trips, we were actually involved in a flash flood. And it is daunting because in the life that I live, I am not exposed to nature. I have my own little safe world. I know my place in the world. And when you get in an environment like that, you realize how powerful God's nature is and how insignificant we are. And some people were terrified, some people were wanting and willing to try to help others. And it was so scary, but yet exhilarating at the same time because we rushed to help. And I had learned all during my life and going to college how people either rush to or run away from danger. And I actually saw it in action during the flash flood, where people were running when they had kids on the other side, were running away from, and people were rushing to help. So it's a real slap down for us as far as understanding our place in the world, that God is always there. He's our big protector, and we are little tiny ants in God's world, and it makes you understand that because we get a different idea of who we are as people. And when you're out in nature and see God's power and God's wonder, you're reminded of how He can change and save your life. So, rivers are wonderful.
when you're in a boat.
On the shore.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Allison.
Aldina, did you have something too? Did you?
No, I mean, we've rafted the Colorado
Mhm.
also, but we didn't have that experience.
Okay.
Was there a little bit of fear
Oh, absolutely.
on the Colorado? Did you go through any rapids or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All of them, from Marble Canyon
Uh-huh.
down through the biggest ones.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Were you a swimmer? Do you know how to swim? Did you have a life jacket on?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
life jacket.
Yeah,
Okay.
you couldn't be on the raft
Without
without.
one.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, back to our story. Go ahead.
Mhm.
I do have a little bit.
Oh, good.
I can share about how swift and cold that
cold, very
Colorado
cold.
River really is. Okay, you're rafting down the Colorado, and we normally went in July, 4th of July. We've done this twice. You're on this raft, and the only time you stop is for lunch, you know, and then in the evening. Well, it's warm, you're drinking lots of water, you're on this boat, this raft, and, you know, nature calls.
Yes, what do you do?
And so you, you tell the captain, the boat, you know, driver, or whatever you wanna call him, and there's more than just one, you know, hey, it's time, slow down, you know, and how you go to the bathroom is you jump in the river. Well, even though you have a life vest on, this is the Colorado, it is cold, it is swift. And I mean, you forget really why you jumped in the river. And all you can think
Once you
about
hit the water.
is trying to get back into that boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that water is cold, it is swift, so I can imagine in a flash flood. The last time we went, we weren't involved in the flash flood, but there was one down in like the
That's what
Havasupai
we were
area.
Havasu when it flooded.
Yeah,
When it
and
flashed.
we were there afterwards, and we couldn't hike down that little canyon that we wanted to because of the water being so high. So we escaped that, but it can be very scary, yes.
Okay, now let's picture that with no life raft, not knowing how to swim,
Life vest.
life vest. Thank you, that's what I meant. I love it when people catch me because I'll go back in, look and go, life raft. So thank you.
Well, that's
I'm glad I have people that got my back. Okay, so the time has come. People are ready to claim their promised land. Now all nations quake in terror at the knowledge that the Israelites are encamped at Shittim, just a short distance from Jericho, the walled fortress, the gateway to Canaan. Let the games begin. Okay, so Rahab, it's possible she's watching for these spies. The king is certainly on high alert, thinking they're coming, right? And so let's picture this. She's watching out of her window. She's on the east gate, like I said, so she knows the coming and goings. And she, well, let's back up. Solomon and, I hate it when my mind goes blank, Ephraim, do make it across the river. In fact, Ephraim was so afraid, he said, did I mention I don't know how to swim? As they get to the other side. And he said, you know what? God is with us. If we don't make it to the other side, it's his will. Jump in. Let's go. So they do get to the other side of the Jordan. Now they're soaking wet. And they better wait a while, because if they go through the gates wet and muddy and you know, they may think they came from the other side of the Jordan where the Israelis are, right? So they wait until the gates maybe are almost closed, because they keep that city pretty tightened up. They want it sealed. They know what's coming. So maybe Rahab is watching for them, and she sees these two guys, two young, they're fit, and maybe they're looking around at the walls. They don't have satchels. They don't have things to bring to trade. They're just being observant of Jericho. And she spots them. And she's like, this might be the guys. So she starts talking to them, because she's right there at the gate. And she says to them something like, thank you. Hey, fellas. And she's hanging out over her window to get their attention. Well, they're not paying attention to her, because that's not why they're there, right? And they don't talk to, what was their attitude on harlots and prostitutes in Israel?
Stay away.
Stay away?
Stoned.
Stone them to death? They don't have anything to do with them, right? These guys have been wandering for 40 years. And the first thing they say when they go into Jericho is a prostitute, right? So she's trying to talk to them. And I apologize, my papers have been mixed up a little bit. Here we go. She noticed that they're disguised. They probably are wearing uniforms of Amorite soldiers that have been killed. So it's possible that there's maybe a blood stain on it, if they were brutally slashed and killed. So maybe she noticed something like that. And she calls down to them to try and get their attention. But they're not interested in talking to her because she's a prostitute. And she says, in her mind, she was not giving up, okay? This is too important. She's really believing the story she's hearing about this God and who they follow. And she's grown up in a place where they sacrifice kids. They have idols that they pray to, and maybe she's not seen any miracles happen in her lifetime for her people. It's all about the king, it's all about the wall, and that's supposed to be who's going to protect her. So let's just picture that she's afraid for their sake, because if she notices them, that they stand out a little bit, probably the guards at the gate may take notice of them as well. So she's trying to get their attention, and they really don't want to talk to her. But picture this. Maybe she says something like, even the king has drunk wine from my cup and has eaten from my hand. So now maybe they're like, wait, what? You know the king? Maybe there's some information here. And the taller one stopped and looked up again. Why do you honor us with your attention? Because she keeps trying to get their attention. And she says, because I have wisdom beyond my years, young man, wisdom I can share with you if you're wise enough to listen. She kept her tone teasingly seductive, for they were close enough that the guards could be listening in on what she's saying to them. I know things you may want to know, is what she says to them. And so they are smart enough to finally get the hint. And she says, I'll meet you down by the gate. And she brings them to her home. And then she brings them into her home. And now her whole attitude now has changed, right? She's not trying to seduce them. She's trying to save them. Because she thinks that this God has done all these things, that her heart, God can put his name on anybody's heart, even a harlot in Canaan, right? He calls who he calls. He can use anyone. And so she takes them in, and she wants them to know she knows who they are. So she says, the Jordan is high this time of year, is it not? Like, I know you just crossed the river. And I know why you're here. Okay? So, but she also knows that they were noticed when they came in through the gate. And probably the guards are going to show up pretty quickly to come investigate and see who these two are. And they know they saw these two go into Rahab's house. So now she's trying to get them to move quickly to go hide. And they're still, thinking of her as a harlot. Like, how can you possibly help us? So she talks to them about going upstairs and hiding on the roof. And they're thinking, isn't that the first place they're going to look? And now they're wondering, are you trying to trick us? Are you trying to get in good with the king, maybe? They know they saw us come in here, you're going to hide us on the roof, and then we're ambushed. It's over, right? And she tells them, well, you can go up on the roof, or you can stay right where you're at, and they're going to be here any minute, and you'll be gone anyway. So they end up going up to the roof. And she hides them, with the flax. I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is?
Stalks.
What is that?
It's when you cut it down, it's kind of dried. They're dried.
Oh,
they
my
put it- and they
Midwest
put it-
women
and
know
they
what
put
this
it-
we know what it
is.
is.
And they put it in bundles,
Yes.
bundle it together.
Right.
Like you see the picture of, in the fall, of sheaves of wheat, kind of like
Okay,
tied
okay.
together.
We call
So
it
that would hide them.
shucks.
That would hide them. So, the guards do come, and she's got to think pretty quick, because what they're going to do is they're going to come in her place and they're going to search. So, thinking on her feet, she says, they were here, but they've left. They went out the gates just as they were closing. If you hurry, you may be able to catch them. She doesn't want them coming in, right? And the head guard is going to have to answer to the king for them getting away. So he's thinking pretty quickly too, I better not waste time searching this place. We better get out and go looking for them, right? So she runs upstairs and she makes them give her a promise that her and her family will be saved. And I'm sure Solomon is looking at her like, he said, I know the God you serve. I'm watching. I've been listening. And I want to know him too. And Ephraim says, well, you know our laws. Like, you can't be one of us from your past. And she says, all I ask is that you save myself and my family. Will you make that promise? Okay? So the king's men leave, and she also told them when they left to go up in the hills and hide for 3 days. Isn't that interesting? 3 days. Right? So the guards eventually come back. They could not find them. And Solomon and Ephraim get back to camp and report that the people are very afraid. They're very afraid. But the Israelites are also questioning because now they've seen these big walls. They've seen the soldiers all along the top of the walls with their arrows. There's no way they can get close enough to climb the walls. They don't have any battering rams to break down the walls. But Joshua is telling them, trust in the Lord. He's going to make a plan for us, right? And where did you stopped in at 2?
Yes.
Do you want to read 3?
Okay, I read 2. Okay, 3.
Here we go. Crossing the Jordan. Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests who are Levites carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before, but keep a distance of about 1,000 yards between you and the ark. Do not go near it. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. Joshua said to the priests, take up the ark of the covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it and up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the ark of the covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's water, go and stand in the river. Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, and all the ites. See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, 1 from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the ark of the covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan at flood stage now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Edom in the vicinity of Jordan, while the water flowing down to the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground.
It sounds like a story we've kind of heard before, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of Jericho is watching this, especially Rahab.
Mm-hmm.
So Rahab now has to get her family to come to her house. But it may not have been that easy. You know, they weren't living maybe in the city. They had homes outside of the city gates. They had lives. So she had to convince them that this God was going to protect them, not the king of Jericho, that this time they were not going to be defeated. And that's a whole long story, we won't go into it, but she did convince them to come to their house, her house, and be safe. But in the meantime, don't you think some of the people in Jericho would be questioning who God is? Don't you think more than Rahab's family would have been thinking about it? Apparently not. God bless you. Okay, so gets her family in. The Israelites are on the other side of the Jordan. What did they do when the river was dried up?
They crossed over.
And what did they pick up on the way?
Rocks. Stones.
Big rocks or little rocks?
Little ones.
So it says that they had rocks big enough that they had to carry on their shoulders, right? So that ground must have been pretty dry, I'm thinking.
So they had to pick up that size.
So this size.
Much bigger.
Much bigger. God likes to make a way for us, doesn't he? If he can dry up, you know, the Red Sea and then the Jordan River, and for you people that have been on the rivers, I've been on the rivers, but not rafting like that. You know, the ocean can be scary enough sometimes. So they're encamped. People of Jericho are pretty scared. Now, what does Joshua want them to do?
Aren't they building, I'm trying to think, isn't it the 12 tribes? Yes, they're,
Yes, they go back and they get 12 more rocks, correct?
yes.
That is correct. One thing they did not do when they were wandering around in the desert, they didn't get circumcised. Oh. Ouch. So Joshua wants them all to be circumcised now. Young and old. With a knife. Just before they go into battle. If you're one of the soldiers, are you thinking, can it wait?
Right.
Right? I mean, really? Now? But they're obedient. They're not like the last generation. They're trusting God. Okay, circumcision? Yeah, we're doing it. But it did put them down for a few days, right? They did have to rest. So now Jericho's watching them. They came across the Jordan that was dried up for them. And now they're just encamped. And they're just there. Because now they gotta heal, right? But isn't that just like our Lord? That we're not doing it in our own strength? Do you think they're feeling pretty weak after they got circumcised? They're not feeling like these warriors that they've been training to be, to go in and take the promised land, right? They know they're doing it for God, but now they've just been brought down a notch, right? I can imagine. Well, I can't imagine. I'm just saying. So then what does he do when they're ready? Joshua tells them to do what?
They have to start marching.
Marching. So they go and they march, and what do they take? What goes first?
The Ark of the
The
Covenant.
Ark of the Covenant, right? Leads the way, and the soldiers can't get too close. So the soldiers are all watching, and they're marching. What do you think's going through their minds? Wait, could they be mocking them?
Why are we afraid of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, why are we afraid?
Yeah,
40,000 of them.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but they're not doing it, they're
I
marching.
don't know what they're.
They're not even, they were told to stay silent, right? Just go and march around the walls. And they're obedient and they do that. How many days did they do that for?
7.
Yeah, 7.
7. So they march around one time and they leave. And I think that's probably very confusing. They don't know what's happening. Where's the battering? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, they actually did make noise.
It says here that the armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of the Lord, while the trumpets kept sounding. So on the second day, they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. So they did actually make a lot of noise. So it must have frightened the people inside of Jericho's wall.
That couldn't see
Yes.
over.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you for correcting me. I thought they just said that on the
I
seventh day.
just had a quick aside too. Isn't that a great demonstration of it's not the power of the individual that's
Right.
there? It is such a clear definition that this is God's hand, and all the people that are witnessing it, whether they're foes or not, it's like so blatantly God is
So
doing it.
blatantly.
Yeah. So they can't claim any victories. It's all God's.
No, they can't. So now maybe some of the guards are thinking that maybe the ark has all the power. Maybe if we can go and capture the ark, we can take their power. And maybe they had that conversation with Rahab and her family. And she said, "Do you not get it? Did you not see the river dried up? Man is not doing this. It's the God they serve that has all the power." It's just crazy. So, the seventh day, what happens?
No.
Okay, we don't have video of it.
Yeah.
We have stories, we can imagine what it might have been like. But we do and have all seen 9/11.
Mhm.
Our last trip to Israel, we did go to Jericho.
Oh, tell us.
Really not much to tell, but we did go to Jericho and we saw the old remains of the Jericho with the walls tumbled down. Rachel actually climbed up.
Is it?
Yeah, up to the top of the walls.
Because God specifically said, do not rebuild Jericho, right?
Mhm.
It was a
Yes.
cursed place now.
Mhm.
But we do know what it looked like at 9/11 with a building, 2 buildings crumbling down on people, the chaos. So it's not like battles, say from the Revolution, where you have the reds over here and the blues over there, and they blow the trumpet and they're going into battle. Their walls came tumbling down. I can imagine the fear, the chaos of what was happening, right? But Joshua told Salem's, why do I always get his name mixed up? Solemn, fulfill your promise. Go and get Rahab and her family and bring them out to safety in the midst of all this chaos. And I'm sure they saw their neighbors slain, bloody, right? And we don't know, it doesn't tell us in the Bible if any of her family went to live with the Israelites. But we know Rahab did. And we know her lineage, right? So who came from Rahab? Boaz.
Boaz.
So,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. And who did Boaz marry? Ruth, who we'll be studying next week.
Yeah. Could I just share
Please.
something?
I found this section in Joshua 6, 24. It says, "Then they burned the whole city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron into the treasury of the Lord's house. But Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute with her family and all who belonged to her." So actually her whole family was saved. "And because she hid the men Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho, and she lives among the Israelites to this day."
Yes. And her family as well?
Yes. Yeah, okay. That's what it said.
So they did see the power.
Yes.
So God was very clear with his people. Their job was to cleave to him, and he would cause them to be victorious. Not by cunning military strategy or by overwhelming force. Not by advanced technology, but by his power. It was all him.
Mhm.
And isn't that how he wants us to fight our battles? However big or small they are. Okay, that's my little fantasy story. But I just picture them as real people, you know? And the struggles that they're going through. Like Tamar,
Mhm.
like Leah, like Sarah, like us.
Mhm.
So we're going to go into our study now. And was there any pages that you guys really gleaned from? Because the story is very good.
Mhm.
I am sorry.
We watched a program called Patterns of Evidence. It was a series of archaeologists who had done digging in near Jericho, and they found a red cord.
They did.
Serious?
Wow.
Oh, wow. And it still was preserved, huh? That's what is so amazing, isn't it? The articles that have been found over the
Yeah.
years that prove the Bible are real.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
I did not know that. So the religious leaders of Jesus' day were sure of their own righteousness and sure that people such as prostitutes, this is on page 135, have no place in the kingdom of God. Jesus' words were their wake-up call.
Mhm.
I think we're going to be surprised who we see in heaven and who we don't see in heaven. Of course, we won't know because there's no sorrow in heaven. You know what I'm saying?
Or glorified bodies, not these.
Right.
Thank you.
We'll be perfect then.
We'll be 33.
Mm.
And I think the main theme of this whole story was to be strong and courageous in the Lord. He said it over and over again. And through all the battles that we face, that is his encouragement to us to be strong, be courageous in him. We know we can't fight the battles
Mhm.
ourselves.
Right.
I just wanted to share something too that jumped out at me. It was in day one, but it talked about how it's so easy to be hard-hearted. And we think about addicts or people that are disabled or, you know, the foul-mouthed movie stars. You know, they're really, you know, how can they ever be Christians? But we have to realize that we just can't jump to conclusions. We need a Savior as much as Rahab did. And, you know, just because we are not involved in those kinds of things doesn't mean that we don't have sin, and it could probably be in the form of pride, and we need to be repentant. So just wanted to share that.
And I was watching online the video that the pastor showed at the very end.
Yes.
I know.
Ron Reagan.
Yes.
Yes.
Your husband brought that in for us.
Oh,
Mhm.
it's awful. That was awful.
I'm not afraid to die, to burn in hell.
Okay, does somebody want to explain what that was? Thank you.
Ron Reagan, famous son of Ronald Reagan, is an avowed atheist. Not even agnostic, he's an atheist.
Atheist.
And he was trying to drum up followers for the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And so he said that I am an avowed atheist and I'm not afraid to burn in hell.
Mhm.
Yes, and so send me some money. No, that was the gist of it.
Right. And they advertised on two prominent
Yeah,
places too, didn't
on
they?
CBS.
CBS, on NCSIS.
It was during NCIS.
Yes, and I forget what the other.
Very popular show that lots of people are watching.
60 Minutes, thank you, Dee. 60
And so the
minutes.
gist of it was to separate religion and state,
Eight,
Yeah.
yes.
to keep, and
Well,
we
there's
know,
some people who believe that, the government should be a separation of,
Yes.
church and state,
Mhm.
and that it's, they misinterpret what the founding fathers really wanted.
Yes,
The founding fathers just did not want a state mandated religion.
They had just come from that.
right.
So what has happened is that this group is taking it, twisting the intent and saying it's freedom from religion and that it's a separation of church and state, and government should totally be completely separated from religion, which is in fact not true.
Right.
correct.
And, you know, as a teacher, when I was teaching American history, you know, we really emphasized with children that the reason people came to America was because they wanted religious freedom. They didn't want to be told by a king that they had to follow a certain religion. So that was the whole purpose for many of them in coming to America.
And it doesn't say in the Constitution, separation of church and state.
No, it
Where
doesn't.
it's our
It
never-
doesn't, they
No.
take it way out of context,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we may not think that we're running from false gods when danger comes knocking. Sorry, I'm on page 143.
Okay.
But how many of us find safety in our bank account,
Mm-hmm.
our refrigerator, freezer, oh, ice cream?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You got it.
Nancy Pelosi has a lot of ice cream in her.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Many different
yes,
flavors.
yes. Family relations, our identity at work. And I know you guys read through this whole study, it's just, there's so much meat in here that we can take into our own lives. What can you guys, do you have a story of courage that you followed through or maybe wish you would have in your life? Or you had to be careless?
Well, I think back to when we were living in North Dakota and the economy was very, very depressed. And we decided, you know, we prayed about this and really felt the Lord calling us to Arizona. And it was really, really quite scary in a sense because neither of us had jobs. We had 2 children. My husband was kind of ill at the time, so it took courage to come. And so, you know, you can really relate to these Israelites as they're, you know, wandering that desert and thinking, okay, where's this promised land? And so it was interesting because it was a hard move for our children too. Our oldest daughter was a junior, starting her junior year in high school. And our youngest daughter was starting 7th grade, middle school. And our oldest daughter was not very excited about a move, but I think 2 months later, my husband was talking to her at lunchtime and just said, well, how do you feel about the move now? And she looked at her dad and she said, it's the best thing that ever happened. So, I mean, she really, really, I was just so proud of her. She started a Bible study at her high school in the back of a pickup.
Wow.
And she got a job right away working at a Christian bookstore. And so she just really kind of found her place and developed some wonderful friends from her church that are still her friends today. So it was a good move.
Well, it's kind of like our study from Genesis, where Lot had a choice, right? He could have gone to Abraham. He could have gone that way instead of up into the caves.
Right.
So I don't think he showed a lot of courage in that decision.
You took
But-
the easy way out.
But the outcome of your story, the courage shines through, you know? Anybody else? Okay. There's so much to read in here. On page 150, says, David was delivered from his enemies and Rahab from Jericho's destruction. Already we have emphasized our need to receive internal salvation. But could there be something more from which you need to be delivered? Could it be although you are saved, yet you carry a burden, something holding you back from completely surrendering to God? Maybe it's worry or addiction. Spending too many hours in mindless Facebook feed, comforting yourselves with that tasty food too easy and too common. Maybe it's insecurity or anxiety. What about a need to be in control? None of us have that one as moms. Or perhaps you need to be delivered from your own selfishness or laziness. We all need the Lord's help to be free from the burden of sin. I know that the biggest thing that the Lord's been working on my heart this season, you know, and a season can be not spring, summer, winter, fall.
Right.
Okay, season's over, God, it's not done yet. Season can be a lifetime of something that He's working in you. But He's really been working on my heart with anger. You know, and when people tell me, oh, you're so sweet, I'm like, you haven't seen me in my moments. And just like a firecracker, like something just explodes in me, and my mouth just goes, and I'm always repent. I feel terrible, and I'm not going to do it again, Lord. But it's a work in progress, because one certain incident that happens, and I just come unglued. And I can be nice and sweet and patient with strangers, with friends. It's harder with family, you know. Oh,
I don't
thank
need the
you.
mic.
Okay.
I have just learned to, when that happens, I've had an issue with anger. Way in the past, God's taken control. I just put my hands up and say, not now. And I go for a walk, or I just turn away. Let me work through the issue, then come back to it. And we either finish the conversation, or I have to say I'm sorry, or we work through it. But at that point, I just know something is going to come out of my mouth that I really need to be sorry for. I just put my hands up and say, stop, not now.
That's great. That's great advice. Waiting, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
waiting.
Just waiting.
The word is always
Calm
popping up.
yourself down.
Wait.
You put yourself in timeout.
Yes, exactly. Put
A good
yourself
one,
in
too.
timeout.
Myself in timeout. And it doesn't matter what the situation is, because in my situation, I feel like it's can be very dangerous. And can't always just walk away, but I can be quiet. Doesn't it in the Bible say somewhere about even a fool looks intelligent when he keeps his mouth shut?
Somewhere.
Good one. Yeah.
It's in the Bible.
Doesn't matter where it is. I can't tell you where, but I know I read it one
Yeah.
It's in Proverbs. I do know that.
Yes. I just wanted to bring out something too, that I have to work on myself for is, are you the do-it-yourself kind of woman where you just feel like you're so self-reliant that you can just handle anything? And I have to realize that really God is in control, and it isn't really up to me to do everything. And fortunately, my husband reminds me of this very often. And I I think sometimes when you're the oldest in the family and you've been put in a lot of responsibility early on, I mean, some of you know my story. I mean, when I was 13 years old, I went to high school. I had to live with my aunt and uncle. I had to cook for myself, and lived in a basement with two other families. There were 6 teenagers, and we all had to survive together. And then the next year, my brother came. I had to cook for him. The next year, my next brother came. I had to cook for him, and just a lot of responsibility early on. And so I think sometimes, it causes you to be driven, and I need to realize that God's in control, not me.
I bet you're a good cook.
Yes, she is.
Lots of practice. So have you guys ever been in a life-death situation where you had to
Brush with death, yeah.
brush with death?
I can share something on that. And I think this day and age here in Phoenix, driving. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Last week alone, I could have been hit twice. And I was so thankful that I looked at that side mirror and that little light went off, because I was ready to switch lanes. I honestly did not see anybody coming, and all of a sudden, whoosh, very quickly, I could have been just creamed. And I think for me, those brushes with death haven't been really natural disasters or anything, but it's just kind of the day-to-day living, just even driving in a big city.
Yeah.
Icy roads in North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
Thought it was Minnesota that we were watching for those license plates. Was it Wisconsin?
We don't care.
Yeah.
We don't care, it's just the icy roads.
Icy roads,
Icy
yes.
roads.
Yes.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how I survived one, but
Mm-hmm.
did, way back when.
God needed you here.
You could relate to Rachel's story then about her husband, how it said, Lord save us in
It
their
wasn't
car.
quite that, but,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had a strange happening on a little trip. We'd gone up and climbed up.
Wait.
Oh. We had gone and climbed up to this area where there was all kinds of volcanic, the black schist rock.
Yes.
Okay, it's like razor blades. I was probably 30 feet high, and it was like a cascade of rocks to this bottom of this horrible area, and we were walking through a little bit of water, and I slipped, and we only had, maybe 3 feet between where we were walking and where the edge of it was, but when I slipped, my feet went out from me, and I knew I would either die or be so horribly hurt if I fell off this little cliff. And it was so strange because time slowed down so much that it was probably only a few seconds. It felt like minutes. It was incredible. And luckily I was able to get myself down and did not go over. But I was sure in my mind I was going over, and I was thinking, how am I going to fall to try to save myself? So everything stops when you're in those, at least for me, it stopped.
Like
I'm
slow motion?
Slow motion, super slow motion. And that's the only time I've ever experienced that.
Were you praying?
God was protecting me. God has protected me so many times when I didn't even know it. I go in fearless thinking I'm doing something and realize, no, it's not you, dummy. It's the big guy. He's got you. So, did you want to say something?
Yeah. We have a friend who works on bridges and water systems and stuff. And about a year and a half ago, anyway, he was 40 feet up and he did not put his tether on.
Oh.
And he fell. And the guy that was down below said that when he got closer to the ground, he says, I swear he slowed down.
Wow.
And so, and God's been with him with this whole thing, and he still has a lot of pain, but, just to think that, when he was telling me that, I was saying, God, and he said, yeah. So, that was just, he shattered both his feet. He was in the hospital for a long time, but if he'd have gone down faster, it would have been worse, but he slowed down.
Possibly death.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
God
40
has
feet.
a purpose for him.
Like the soldiers falling from the wall in Jericho.
Yeah.
I've had experiences like that, but as far as fear goes, before I was a Christian, and my daughter was an infant, and my husband traveled a lot, and I was in my room, I was sound asleep, and I woke up, and I had so much fear. I was like paralyzed, like I couldn't move. I was so scared, I don't know of what. But I was so scared. I knew enough to say, Jesus, please help me. And he did. And the fear went away. And it was shortly after that I became a Christian. But that paralyzing fear, I still remember it. You know, it was just so incredible. I don't know. Ladies, can we turn to page 164? And it talks about different people and who you relate the most to. I'd like to hear what you guys, who you relate the most to. The spies, the Pharisees, Jonah, the Israelites, the people of Jericho, or Rahab?
Think about that a
Do you want me to come and look at your papers and see who you
No.
circled?
No teacher.
No.
Class.
I guess I could say,
For me, it's probably like the spies, because I think about moving to Arizona and coming to a new place, and what is that going to be like? And, you know, getting a job and all of that. So I guess I relate to the spies.
Okay. I related to Rahab, coming out of non-Christian, growing up, had lots of idols. I was in New Age for a while. I was a Mormon for a bit. I even got baptized. Yeah. So God showed me who he was. And then I never looked back once I believed who he was. But even then, you know, in high school I would get invited to go to youth rallies, things like that. And then I would go home, and we did have a family Bible, one of those big ones, never opened, cobwebs in it. But whenever I opened it and tried to read it again, that fear would come. It was the weirdest thing. Because
The Lord is beginning.
Satan, no, I think it was the enemy attacking me, not wanting me to get into the Word, right? And that was back in high school. Darn it. Could have saved a lot of pain. But I remember Becky saying that all the mistakes that we have made, God restores and we learn, and we can help others through our lessons, right?
yes.
So I think we just need to be courageous, go forth, trust in God, even when it doesn't look like there's a way.
And realizing too that he took what was considered the lowest person on the scale and used her for good.
Yes.
And how many times we've seen that people have been drug addicts or, you know, whatever, and it's like God has to pull them up a little further, but they become, you know, incredible people and realize who took them out of that pit.
Just to piggyback on what you said, Sue, I think sometimes people who've been really into sin and so forth so long, that sometimes their hearts are softened quicker than ours even.
You know, I go to CR on Monday nights, and I hear a lot of stories.
Describe it, Denise.
A lot of stories.
Tell everybody.
CR is Celebrate Recovery. So, and it's not just for alcoholics or addicts. There's a lot of people in there for fear, anxiety. They call it their hurts and their hang-ups. There's a lot of women that have been trafficked as kids, violated as kids. And God can heal them. You know, it's very good just to go and take inventory of your life and what's going on in your heart. Is there anything you guys would like to add to this story? How'd you like the story?
It's, yeah, this one was a good one.
That's so good, because it really kind of concludes what we've said.
Okay, so we are going to take this with us through the week, right? We're going to be courageous. And hope believes, right? That's where our courage comes from. Not from who we are, not what we can accomplish or we can do. So Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and the assurance about what we do not see. Those 40,000 soldiers didn't know the walls were going to collapse.
No.
They just believed that God was going to do it.
And they're still in the heat.
Yes, and those walls are still in the heat.
Right.
Isn't that amazing? When people say that the Bible is boring, they have not read it.
They just read Leviticus.
Or Numbers.
Or Numbers. Deuteronomy. But I don't know about you guys, but between Pastor Dave's teachings in Genesis and then going through this has really brought the stories alive. You know, not just reading verse by verse, but picking them apart and really looking into them. It's like I want to tell everybody about it. You know, I was just working with this person, and the conversation came up about, I shouldn't say this online. We'll probably get kicked off YouTube if I say it, so I'll tell you guys afterward.
Okay,
We're
you're
off.
having a conversation.
We'll have a conversation later. So I think that's it. We'll say goodbye to our online guests.